Buonasera a tutti, good evening and welcome to the Italian Radio Hour. Io sono Viviana and I would like to welcome back our regular listeners and also welcome any new listeners. Also be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook at Italian Radio Hour and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch up on any past video interviews. Vorrei dare il benvenuto ai nostri ascoltatori da tutto il mondo, grazie per essere con noi anche oggi mentre continuiamo il nostro viaggio per l'Italia e la cultura italiana. Every family has stories. Some are passed down around the dinner table, others disappear forever, unless someone decides to go looking for them. Today's guest has spent years helping thousands of people reconnect with their Italian roots, but his own story might be one of the most fascinating of them all. His own research began with nothing more than a calling card brought from Italy by his grandmother. The single artifact eventually led him from humble farming families in Puglia to an astonishing noble lineage connected to dukes, princesses, European royalty, and even a pope. Bob Sorrentino is the creator of the internationally followed Italian Roots and Genealogy Podcast, founder of the Italian Genealogy Blog, and author of Farmers and Nobles. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere, ma prima pubblicità. Parli italiano? Do you want to learn, improve, or master your Italian? Istituto Mondo Italiano can help. Located in the heart of Regent Square, Mondo Italiano offers small group classes and one-on-one private tutoring in person or online to help you learn Italian in no time. Visit us online at istitutomondoitaliano.org. Wondering when is genealogy enter your life as a hobby or perhaps as an obsession?
Yeah, more an obsession, as my wife would say. It was probably about 15 years ago that I
Mhm.
started in earnest. I always had, and it's in the lower left-hand corner there, the card of my great grandfather, my great grandfather, and it was always in the photo book. And my parents would tell me that Nicola Piumalo was a duke or a count or had some kind of nobility. So that's where it all started with that little card, and I had no idea what I was going to find when I first Googled that name.
Yes, so once you so what happened once you found your first record and you start Googling your name as well?
So the first thing that came up was something that I had never seen before, and it was a page from the Libro d'Oro, and it showed a Nicola Piumalo marrying Amelia Caracciolo in 1882. And it showed that popped up on the Caracciolo page, and I had never heard that name before. And but the dates matched. My father's name was Nicola, named after his grandfather. My oldest aunt was Amelia, named after her grandmother. So, and the dates, my grandmother was born in 1883, so all the dates matched. But I wasn't sure. So I called my cousin who lived with my grandmother, and I asked her, do you know this name, Caracciolo? And she said, of course, that's Nanny's. That's what we call my grandmother, Nanny. Uh, that's her mother. And I said, do you know how famous this family was?
Mhm.
And she said, well, she used to tell us that her cousin was a princess, uh, but we just thought she was a crazy old lady.
Uh-huh. So it's like,
But
did you actually believe her?
uh, but her cousin was a princess because her grandfather was a prince, Prince Luigi di Torchiarolo.
Mhm.
So uh, that just led me down a path through the Libro d'Oro. I was able to trace back the very first Caracciolo, who came to Naples in 950.
Wow. Mhm.
And from what I've read and from what I can piece together, the family was originally from they were originally Byzantine, so from Turkey. Um, but nobody ever talked about it. I had no idea.
Mhm. Yes, so So how did you trust it in the beginning? Did you trust the research immediately? What, obviously this information is something pretty exciting. And so tell us a little more about everything else that went behind the scene.
Yeah, and that's a good question because no, I didn't. And nobody should when they're doing research. You need to find those records. And I was able to find some on the Antenati, uh, and some I was able to get from a genealogist that I hired in Italy. And I mainly wanted him to help with the Sorrentino family because I couldn't find anything on them. But he put some of the pieces together with Piermalo and Cracciolo. But I was able to find my great grandfather's birth record, which showed that he was the son of Saverio Giovanni Piermalo, who was the second son of Duchess Beatrice Capici Piccicelli and Giacomo Piermalo, who was the Count of Montebello. Um, and interesting, I mean, just today, I pieced together a big part of Nicola's life. Um, in his birth record, it said that he was a filio naturale,
Mhm.
which meant he was illegitimate. And he's got two birth mothers. And I later, with the help of AI, was able to find out that he actually, on his birth record, he had two birth fathers. Um, Apparently, what happened was his real mother, they were his parents weren't married, and because they were nobles, I guess, they were able to get two people to say that one was the father and one was the mother.
Mhm.
Um, and his birth was recorded as these two people as being his parents. Uh, just today, and AI is a great tool. Just today, I asked her, well, how did this happen? And it said, well, nobility would, if somebody was born out of wedlock, they were able to kind of get people to say that they were the parents.
Mhm.
And, but it said further in this record, it showed that, and it doesn't give the year, but it showed that eventually the court in Naples recognized him as the natural son, the real son of his real parents, the Saverio Giovanni Piermalo and Maria Savino. And it just was just such an interesting kind of story because when I first heard filio naturale, I had no idea what that meant.
Mhm.
And it was, I
Mhm.
guess, a nice way of saying illegitimate.
Okay. Mhm. I understand. Yeah, that's yes, possibly without context, I would not have translated correctly myself because naturally born son, but here is has that subtle meaning of how you interpret that it was a legitimate. So the researcher never really stops. It always gets one layer deeper and deeper, right? There are questions that you have to go and maybe questions that you had in the past. In the past, maybe there were not the tools to get the information, and then just keep on, almost like an investigator, keep on examining your evidence from a different angle.
Yeah, and I tell people sometimes you have to, because this is what I did. Sometimes you have to step away for a while,
Mhm.
and things are always being added onto the internet. And you go back 3 months later, and you'll find something that pops up. Um, like I said, I had my doubts. What really had me, other than the documents that I found, I eventually, and I didn't know this, I didn't know I had cousins in Italy. I didn't know
Mhm.
I had Piumalo and Caracciolo cousins in Italy. Um, my grandmother's family, Piumalo, only her and her aunt came to America. Everybody else stayed in Italy. Um, so I got a message one day on Facebook. It's probably close to 10 years now, from one of my third cousins, Cinzia. And she said, uh, I know who your family is. And I said, she said Pure Malo, and I said, yeah. She thought she would find people in South America and Spain because the family originally came from Spain. She had no idea she would find somebody in America. And so once we compared notes and I told her who my grandmother was and who my great grandfather was, we were able to piece together our trees together. Uh, and so that once that happened, I knew that I was definitely descendant from that family.
Mhm. So this is again one side of the family.
Mm.
Let's switch to the other side of the family because also from what we can see in your background is also the title of your book, Farmers and Nobles.
Mhm.
So what did you know about your mother's family beforehand? And did you have more records? Was there more to investigate, or you knew pretty much everything about it?
I don't know anything, to be honest with you. I used to play cards with my grandmother when I was a little kid, and I never thought to ask her. I wish I did. I have so many questions that you wouldn't believe. So I didn't really know anything. Originally, we were always told that the family came from Bari, which was true, but they didn't come from the city. They came from Torito, which
Mhm.
is, a part of the metropolitan area, I guess, for lack of a better word, part of the province, I suppose. Um, so I found out about Torito, it must have been 30 years ago. And that was our first trip to Italy. We were living in England, and I was supposed to meet one of my cousins there. And then he eventually couldn't make it, and we never got there. But over the years, I have cousins that were born there because when my grandmother came, or my grandparents came to America, they left my oldest uncle behind with his
Mhm.
grandparents. He was maybe 2 or 3 years old, and he never left until 1950. So we had a connection there, uh, and I eventually found out that the town was Torito. And I was lucky because when I started to search the Antenati, Torito must have been one of the earliest places that they started filming the records because everything was there. I was able to find my grandparents' birth record and their marriage record, and then subsequently go back in time as far as the records went. So all through the Antenati and the records, we were able to trace back. And we did get to go there a couple of years ago and, you know, walk the town and be on the street. That family, everybody came here. So there was nobody that I know of. Um, but I mean, that's what I think is so interesting about my background is that had the families never left Italy, not only were they in different places, but they were at such a different socioeconomic group that
Mhm.
they never would have crossed
They
paths,
would never have met.
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm. Indeed. And it's funny because now, obviously, I'm from Italy and I met here, I've met in the US more Italians from different regions that I would not have met had I stayed still in Rome. So that's what happens. So obviously, this is your family story, one that has a lot of surprises. Should I call you Your Highness now? But you are a very strong proponent, obviously, that every story is worth being told. So I was wondering if among all the different interviews and people that you have assisted, if there are any stories that you have uncovered of other people that might still give you goosebumps.
Oh yeah, there's been several. Um, I'm a firm believer in that there are no coincidences and that our ancestors want to be found.
I
Um,
love that. Our
yeah,
ancestors want to be found. Hmm.
and there's so much evidence of that by some of the stories. I mean, I think one of my favorite and probably one of the most amazing was somebody I interviewed who went to visit his hometown in Italy, um, and he went with a friend. His friend's last name was Napolitano. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
million Napolitanos, right? And he asked him. He said, "Well, what town are you from?" And it was one town over. So he said, "Well,
Mhm.
let's go. Let's see if we could find anybody in your family." So they went to the town, and the person I interviewed, his cousin lives in Italy, so they went with her to, and they were just looking for Napolitanos, in the phone book and going to the houses and asking people if they had family in Connecticut, and they said no, we're sorry. So they left, and on the way out of town, there was a fountain that was fed from the water from the mountain. And his cousin said, "We have to stop here. You have to drink the water here. You're never going to taste water like this in America. It's great." So as they're drinking the water and talking, a garbage truck pulls up and asks, "Who are you? What are you doing?" So his cousin explained that they were in the town looking for the Napolitanos from Connecticut, but they couldn't find anybody, so they left. And one of the guys in the garbage truck said, "Follow us." And he brought them to the town of his cousins, the house of his cousins.
Wow. Led them to the very house.
Right. So coincidence, it's hard to say. Another really interesting one is I don't remember the town, but um, this was a client of the person who did my genealogy, Bella Italia genealogy, Alessandro. And he took a client to this town, and they were walking through the town, and an old woman came up to them and asked what they were doing. Obviously, she knew that, they pick us Americans off, right? And so she asked, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Oh, his family is from here." And she said, "Come with me." And she went to this little side chapel somewhere on a side street. She had the
Mhm.
key to the door. She opened up the door, and it was a shrine to Santa Lucia. And this particular shrine, people from all over the world would send artifacts, gold, silver, that was originally supposed to be used to, I guess, pay for the upkeep of the shrine, but they just left it there. And she said, "You have to go and pick up something and put it over your eyes because Santa Lucia is the patron saint of eyes and she'll
Mhm.
protect your eyes." So he picks it up and he puts it to his eyes and he said, "I don't believe this." And Alessandro said, "What don't you believe?" He said, "This was sent by my great grandparents."
Wow, that
You talk
is a
about the
miraculous
goosebumps.
coincidence. Absolutely.
Um, and I'll give you one more. That's another really, really interesting one.
Mhm.
Um, he uh, he was in Italy, never did ancestry, had no intention of ever doing any ancestry research, didn't care, nothing. He was his last day in Amalfi, Positano, and it was raining. So they were stuck in the hotel room, and he picked up a magazine and he saw that Gragnano wasn't that far away.
Mhm.
So he said to his wife, "I remember when I was 21 years old, my uncle telling me that the family came from Gragnano. I
Which
have
is
to go
also
there."
the famous capital of dry pasta, just by
Right.
the
Yeah,
way.
exactly. So he said, I have to go there tomorrow. And she said, "This is our last day in Italy. You can't go." And he said, "You could go to Capri, go wherever you want. I have to go to Gragnano." So he said, I hired a car and we're driving to Gragnano. And the driver says, "Well, why do you want to go to Gragnano? There's nothing really there, and just the pasta." And he said, "Well, my family's from there." And the driver said, "No, you don't want to go to Gragnano. You want to go to Lettere."
Mhm.
And he said, "Normally I would say, no, take me where I want to go, you know." He said, "But in this case," I said, "Okay, take me to Lettere." He gets there, they go to the town hall, and they tell him to go across the street to the church. And he goes into the church, and the priest tells him, "You don't want to be at this church. You want to be at the other church." And he found his family back to writings and books and all of that back to 1500 in the other church.
Wow, that is an amazing discovery. How likely is it to actually to still find records that survive the wars? Because sometimes that is the issue that records might have been destroyed.
It's difficult. Some towns were untouched, and like my grandmother's town, Torito, they really weren't bombed. Bari was bombed, but Torito wasn't. So their records were pretty much intact. Uh, the big thing is it's very, very difficult to get back past the official records kept by the town, back to 1800. Um, the churches, some priests are very, very open and very, very happy to let you go in and search records. Other priests just won't let anybody in.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of the churches also, they were destroyed, war, fire, earthquakes. They moved the records to other places. So it does get very, very difficult. Once you get past those civil records, 1800, and that's thanks to Napoleon of all people.
Okay. In addition to yourself, having discovered famous ancestors, anyone else that discovered they were related to any other famous Italian?
Yeah, there were a couple that I've talked to that were able to find some nobility in their family. Um, the hard thing about finding that is you have to be lucky enough, like I was, to have that one piece of paper, that one letter, that one something that could point you back to that person. If you could find that, um, especially if you could find them in either the Libro d'Oro or the nobility of Naples,
Mhm.
uh, you could do a pretty good job of tracing people back from there.
Mhm. Okay. So we're going to take just a very quick break, and then we're going to come back with Bob Sorrentino. And I would like to go back to your initial statement that you believe our ancestors want to be found and your trip to Italy. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Do you love Italian food? Want to learn the secrets of homemade pasta, sauces, and traditional recipes, just like Nana used to make? At Mondo Italiano, our authentic Italian cooking classes bring the taste of Italy right to Pittsburgh. From fresh pasta to regional specialties, every class is a delicious journey through Italy's culinary traditions. Spots fill quickly, so reserve your seat today. Call us at 412-478-2681 or find us online. Mondo Italiano, where Italy comes alive one dish at a time.
Un caffè, per favore. For more than 35 years, Pittsburgh has started its mornings with La Prima Espresso. From freshly roasted beans from around the world to the perfect espresso or cappuccino, every cup is crafted with care. Stop by and enjoy the warmth of our baristas and familiar faces, or bring the taste of Italy home. Order online today at laprima.com. La Prima Espresso, Pittsburgh's coffee. So, Bob, you make this statement that our ancestors want to be found, and I think it's a pretty extraordinary statement in a way that, in addition to the stories to be told, don't you feel? And I think that's kind of a concept that you have elaborated on. We have blood memory, our fears, our personalities, our instinct. Somehow we can explain them until we add these answers and this research, and we find where we're originally from. What's your elaborate on that?
Um, Well, my wife says she could see how I'm related to some of these nobility because I'm a dictator or sort of. Maybe that's in my memory. Um, but no, I've learned because I interviewed two people that really dive deep into that DNA part,
Hmm.
where we always think of, at least for years, we think of the physical traits that we get from our ancestors, but we
Hmm.
don't think about artistic traits or the way we move or do or say things or fears. One of them explained to me how um, you may be afraid of fire, or you may be afraid of water, or you may be afraid of going broke. And it's probably because somebody in your near or distant past had an experience where they were caught in a fire, or they may have been afraid on a boat or almost drowned or something like that. And she says that gets passed down. Um, it's an interesting concept, and I guess hard to prove. It's not
Hmm.
like physical traits, where you could see. But to me, it makes sense. And, you know, when I talk about the ancestors want to be found, um, besides the stories that I just elaborated on, clues just pop up sometimes out of the blue, or
Hmm.
people just pop up out of the blue. Our first trip to Italy, where I did the research on some of the nobles and went to their hometowns, it got delayed because of COVID. We had to wait 18 months to finally go. And just before we went, my dad's half first cousin, also named Nicola, uh, my great grandfather remarried. He was 60 and she was 30, and he had another family.
Hmm.
And out of the blue, just before we went on that trip, I got a message from Nicola and said he's going to meet us in Naples. And he took me to the home of my father's two first cousins that I never knew existed.
Hmm.
And they had photographs that my grandmother had sent with her handwriting on the back. And they had my parents' wedding photo that my grandmother had sent in 1944. Had COVID not hit, we would have gone on the trip and I probably never would have met him and I probably never would have known any of this.
Hmm.
So it's hard to explain, but I just feel there's a force out there. And I know I've talked to a lot of other people who kind of feel the same way.
Hmm. So this back to the roots type of experience. Did you get also, to experience the involvement of the whole town and tell us a little bit about maybe the preparation that both yourself and the people that assisted you on the trip did, almost like the homework to ensure that your trip would be as successful. And also, let's define what that successful would have been for you. So tell us a little bit about the pre, the during, and then the post.
Yeah, originally I talked to Alessandro from Bella Italia, and I talked to him about doing something like that because he kind of does it, but he couldn't do it. So he recommended Letizia Sinisi from
Mhm.
Italy Rooting, and she was just fantastic. And what she did, she asked me a lot about the history of the family and what places I would want to go to, and she put together the whole entire itinerary for us, and it was totally inclusive and immersive. That's the way she
Mhm.
does it. Again, because when we did Torito, we met the mayor and we met Don Nicola from the parish priest and things like that, and they took us to the Comune. But for the nobility tour, she just they treated us as if I was these people. Every town we went to, the first town was Capricotta, where my third great grandmother was the Duchess of Capricotta. And we went into the church, and they had vestments that she had made with the family crest on it. They
Wow.
they the priest introduced me uh, in Italian to the congregation, and nobody laughed.
Hmm.
And it's a small little town. And then I spoke, and nobody laughed. Uh, and so they talked about how important um, the family was to that town, and how they provided for the people, and how they would bring things from Naples, investments and things like that. Um, in Avellino, um, we walked into the palazzo, and there was, I don't know, about 10 or 12 people with, the horns, trumpets from the 1600s, and they welcomed us in. And um, I'm standing there like this goofy American. I don't know what to do. uh, but I asked Letizia after that, and I said, I don't understand why I was greeted like this. So I'm
Hmm.
just an American that has, ancestors from here. And she said, well, we don't forget. Italians don't forget.
Hmm.
And you have to understand that 500 years ago, the nobility was everything.
Hmm.
They supplied the jobs, they supplied the land, they supplied the churches, uh, and they were just, they ran everything. And they weren't necessarily all bad. We always see the
Hmm.
things, the bad ones and stuff like that. And then on the way to Montebello, she said, if you think they treated you like nobility in Avellino, they're going to treat you like God in Capricotta.
Okay.
And that's when we just had this big all-day party. We went from one town to another town. They had musicians. They had a fashion show where they dressed my daughter as the Contessa. Um, we got to go we got to go inside the home. It's not in good shape anymore, unfortunately. But we were there all day. The musicians were supposed to just play in one town, and they followed us to the second town because they were having so much fun.
Hmm.
And we had a big picnic outside, and it was, 6 hours, six of the best hours that I ever had in Italy. That's without question. Uh,
Yes, and a big shout out to Letizia. We actually from Italian Rooting, we actually had her as a guest, and we share some of the experiences that she has organized for her clients, and it is just being part of that community for the length of the stay. Also, research, contact with the young, contact with other relatives that potentially even existed, and it's really when people come back home from these experiences, they really feel changed,
mhm,
and it's not just let's go to just the museum or let's go just to the cemetery. And one thing that is also very important that we were discussing recently is also to allow the person that comes, the rooties, so to speak, to experience all the experiences within the time that they need. So if they need to stay in front of a tombstone in a cemetery for like an hour, that is what they need, and this is what they will be given. So, as I said, Letizia has that sensibility to really allow everyone to experience the reconnecting with their family within the whatever time they need. I have a question for you regarding immigration, and I would like to hear more about your research about the very first Italian immigrants, not just the Ellis Island, but also the exploitation, the child musicians, the laborers, the people that history forgot or what the main textbooks don't talk about. So tell us more about this project that you're working on, and why is it important to tell those stories now?
Yeah, I've made friends with producer director Michael Cavieri several years ago, and again, we didn't know each other. And when we first met, we found out that we were both born in the same town in Queens, New York. Uh, so that kind of cemented the relationship. but he acted in some Hollywood films. He had a little role in um, a couple of mafia type movies, and he got he soured on that because he felt that our story isn't being told. So he's been
Mhm.
producing movies now about the history of the sulfur miners in Sicily and returning to
Yeah.
his home and all of that. My other partner is Joe Tuccione, who is just a wealth of knowledge on that. He co-authored the book Italian Swindle to New York.
Mhm.
Uh, and I never knew any of this history. And I don't think too many Italian Americans actually know that the first Italians, well, not the first, but the first big wave that came in the 1860s through the 1880s were kind of conned here, being told that they were going to go to South America, but it was
Mhm.
quicker and cheaper to take them to New York. So they dumped them off in New York.
Hmm.
There were padrones on both sides of the ocean that were enlisting these people to come here under false premises and promises. Um, and when they arrived, they had nothing. They had no jobs. They had no money. They had to fend for themselves. And of course, they eventually did, but it was a very, very tough life. I mean, they were called in to be strike breakers, and they didn't know what strike breakers were. Um, the children that were brought over were either stolen or sold in Italy to come here and trained as musicians to be out on the street.
Oh, okay.
And very, very, very sad story. In fact, Joe and I did about a 13-minute piece on three of them that they were able to trace through, and they grew up and became good citizens and things like that. But throughout, the 1870s through, I guess the 1920s, it was very, very tough for Italian Americans. And I don't think enough people, you know, not so much my age, but younger people don't understand how hard it was for the Italians when they came here.
Yes. And also, just to perhaps one of the last few questions, because the new generation might not be familiar with what happened to their great grandparents, you often encourage people to interview older family members in before it's too late. They're the
Mhm.
depository of all the answers, a lot of answers that we will be seeking after when it's too late. So how, if someone is not really experienced in that, can you give us some tips how you go about if you had maybe a little basic script, anything that you would like to tell us about how to go about start recording the information.
Yeah, I mean, I think nowadays it's great because everybody has a camera on their phone.
Mhm.
But I would, there are still some people whose grandparents probably came in the 1960s. I would just sit them down and ask them about Italy. What was it like in Italy in 1960? Uh, what were your parents like? Where did you grow up? What was the town like? What were your aunts and uncles like? What did your grandparents do? These are all questions that I wish I had thought of to ask. For anybody who wants to understand what it was like for the Italians that came in 1900s, um, several years ago, and unfortunately he passed away shortly after I met him, Anthony Riccio. He wrote, I think it's at least four, maybe five books where as a young man, he was the advocate for the Italians that came over in the 1900s, the early 1900s,
Mhm.
um, in Boston. And he photographed and interviewed them, and he recorded them, and he put it all into these books. And you, it, I mean, if you like history and you want to know about Italian American history, if you read Anthony's books, you're going to walk away with what your grandparents or great great grandparents or great 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 grandparents, their experiences, how they came over on the boat, what the boat ride was like, what their parents told them, what the farm was like in Italy in 1900 when they left, why they left. Uh, it's just so much knowledge that you can't read in a history book.
Mhm. So Bob, for once you're on the other side of the microphone, right?
Yes.
After interviewing hundreds of guests, what has this experience, what have they taught you?
Um, I guess they taught me to be humble in a sense. Uh, and because I've interviewed people from all different walks of life, authors and doctors and just regular people. Uh, but there's a camaraderie amongst Italians that I won't say that no other um, nationality has,
Hmm.
but certainly there's that special something with Italians, I think. Uh, it's the food, it's the family, and I think it's the longing to go back to Italy.
Yes, indeed. So I have right now your website up, the Italian genealogy. So what kind of information can someone find onto your website? And there is a plethora of it. So I'll let you walk us through some of the things that you wanted someone to access from your website.
Well, the very first tab is the link to my book. So
Mhm.
if anybody wants to read the book, that's great. Um, Voices from the Past has some of the raw interviews
Mhm.
from Anthony. So it's
Mhm.
actually the actual audio interviews. There's actually some
Okay.
audio interviews
Mhm.
that he did. Uh, the research links will give you links to, I don't know, 30 or so different links that you could use in your research, especially if you're
Mhm.
doing, if you want to look at the nobility ones. But there's, a lot of information out there just to go through and to try and find different things. And there's some professionals out there if you want to hire a professional. Uh,
Okay.
and research tools. I haven't been on that one, but you click that one. I don't remember
And
what
you
I
got
have
some
on there.
recipes. I was looking at Bob's
Oh
YouTube
yes, I
channel.
got yes.
I was
Yes,
Bob's
I got.
pink sauce.
Yes, those are all recipes from my mom's family and some from my dad's family. So, and a couple that I
Wonderful.
invented. So,
Correct. That sounds delicious. So, Bob, again, today we talked about nobles and farmers and saints and popes and forgotten immigrants and incredible coincidences and journeys back to Italy. But I think what people will remember most is something much simpler. Every family matters, every ancestor matters, and every story deserves to be told before it's forgotten. So I wanted to thank you for telling your story to us and the all the amazing work that you have been doing to assist other people to connect. Anything else that we haven't talked about that you would like to mention before we go into our closing?
no, I don't think so. Just a couple of pictures to point out on the right there. The upper right is my father's mother,
Hmm.
Luigi Piomalo, and that's probably, I want to say, I think she was maybe 17, and that was taken in Naples around 1900. And then the lower picture is my great grandparents.
Hmm.
Uh, my great grandfather was the town milkman. He would walk through the town with his cow, and milk the cow, and that's my oldest uncle Giovanni with his
Hmm.
grandparents.
Wonderful. And even the analysis of the pictures, which we got exposed to a couple of weeks ago, can tell us so much about the historical, even when dates or names are not in the back, but maybe the uniforms will give us more idea of the historical period and some other things. So even the pictures itself, we need to investigate like Sherlock Holmes and look at every single detail. Well, Bob, this has been a very
And
interesting.
what's
Yeah.
just one quick thing about that. If you take a picture and put it into ChatGPT or Gemini or one of them and say, tell me what period this is from, tell me what this regiment, this uniform is from, it'll come back and tell you.
Wow, fantastic. See how many, the beauty of the 21st century technology. So, well, but unfortunately, our time together today is up and il Big Bang ha detto stop. And it's time for us to say arrivederci e alla prossima. We want to thank you for tuning in into the program. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have any topics you would like us to address, please contact us at the Italian Radio Hour at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And remember, if you or any of your family and friends have missed a prior episode or would like to listen to this episode again, subscribe to the Italian Radio Hour on YouTube or where you catch your favorite podcasts. And also don't forget to share, because sharing is caring. So I would like to thank Bob Sorrentino one more time for all his amazing work. Don't forget to start your recording in your videos of your relatives. Don't take them for granted. So start journaling also those discoveries about your family. That will definitely come handy. We would like to thank also our sponsors, Istituto Mondo Italiano and La Prima Espresso. Until next time, alla prossima. Ciao ciao.
Ciao, ciao.